Did you know? Well, as they say, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. In the coming days, many people will be gathering with their families to play dodgy board games, open Christmas presents, and of course dive into Christmas dinner. When we think of Christmas dinner, we think of umptuous turkey cooked to perfection. Golden roast potatoes, crisp on the outside and fluffy on the inside. Delicious gravy, thick as custard. Brussels sprouts. Now many people think they don't like them, but trust me, cooked properly in a pan with a little bit of butter and some bacon. Delicious. And of course, to top it all off, a Christmas pudding. Christmas pudding, like mince pies, is a sign of the season. It just feels traditional. Christmas pudding even turns up in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. The pudding was out of the copper, which smells like a washing day. That was the cloth, a smell like an eating house and a pastry cook's next door to each other, with a laundress's next door to that. That was the pudding. In half a minute Mrs. Cratchit entered, flushed but smiling proudly, with the pudding, like a speckled cannonball, so hard and firm, blazing in half a quarter of ignited brandy, and bedight with a Christmas holly stuck in the top. This is the essence of our idea of Christmas pudding, a true Christmas treat, once a year. It just feels old and traditional, and the Victorians certainly thought it had a long history. It was popularly believed that plum pudding and Christmas became a tradition in medieval England. The Victorians suggested that traditionally pudding should be made on the 25th Sunday after Trinity, May or June that is, that it be prepared with 13 ingredients to represent Christ and the 12 apostles, and that every family member stir it in turn from east to west to honour the Magi and their journey in that direction. Some people suggest that the Christmas pudding was the invention of King George I. Famously fat, his nickname was the Pudding King, but in truth, the history of the Christmas pudding is a little more complicated. In the 1500s, puddings cooked, for example, for King Henry VIII, consisted of oats, meat, and spices boiled together. However, there's a problem. Put these ingredients into a pot and they'll become a strange soup rather than a pudding. The answer to this, of course, was to wrap the ingredients in the guts of a pig, much like a sausage skin, holding the ingredients together while they boiled in the water. Of course, by Charles Dickens's time, the pig guts had been replaced by linen, hence Mrs. Cratchit in her kitchen. Christmas puddings, having boiled in their cloth, are traditionally left to hang and dry, and this forms a sort of crust or a skin on the outside of the pudding, as it cools down and coalesces in the bag. So that at least is the origin of the cooking technique for Christmas puddings. But the combination of ingredients that we would recognise wouldn't become popular until King George I's day. Indeed, at some point I would love to try this recipe for a Christmas pudding from the early 1700s. Perhaps that's a good excuse for another episode of Archaeology Gastronomy. It was in the 1830s that the cannonball pudding, mentioned by Charles Dickens, made of flour, fruits, suet, sugar and spices, topped with a holly, first made an appearance. And in 1845, Eliza Acton called it the Christmas pudding in her best-selling Modern Cookery for Private Families. Over the years, traditions gathered around the Christmas pudding, such as making a wish as you stirred the ingredients together, or perhaps adding a coin to the pudding for a lucky someone to hopefully find and not chip their tooth on. The British took the Christmas pudding wherever they went, and frankly it ended up in a few other places too, including Ireland and America. Indeed, in 1927, the Empire Marketing Board issued the King's Chef's own recipe for Christmas pudding, that it might be a unifying dish for people around the world. It was noted that it had the great merit of not needing to be cooked in an oven, something that most lower-class households did not have. Despite the rather outdated idea of a pudding to unite the empire, I quite like the notion of a pudding that unites people. And surely the Christmas pudding is a good candidate for a pudding around which people gather. Whatever your plans this Christmas time, whether you like Christmas pudding or not, season's greetings, Merry Christmas, and a very Happy New Year from everyone at Archaeosoup Towers.